this is my first ever investment property. I made £52,000 profit when I sold it. I got paid £1,500 a month to live in this property. I flipped this property here and made 20 grand profit. And I would literally get 5 or 6 times the cash flow from the exact same property. So one of the best property deals I have ever done. And in this video, I'm going to reveal how you can do exactly the same. Hi, my name's Kevin Poneskis, known as the Property Soldier. I'm a property investor. I've been investing in property for 31 years now. I was in the army for 24 years, started investing age 20, and I actually left the army. I haven't actually had a job since. All of my income comes from property these days. In this video, I'm going to show you how I went from zero to a multi-million-pound property portfolio. But before we get started, like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Joined the army in 1987. Main reason was my dad was in the army, so I followed in my dad's footsteps. That was aged 16. Aged 20, I bought my first buy-to-let property, mainly because my dad told me to. His exact words were, "Kevin, invest in property." An awful lot of guys who are leaving the army at the time I left the army would go into security work, private security, maritime security, going to like Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. And unfortunately, spending more time away from family than when they were in the military. That could have been me there, but for the grace of God go I, right? And fortunately, because of income from property, I was able to leave the army without the need to go and seek another job. So I'm outside of my first ever investment property. So this is a 1-bedroom flat. So I bought this in 1991 as a buy-to-let. So why did I buy this property? Well, you've heard of the phrase, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, I was brought up for many years in this very street, actually in a house just down there. Bought it for £30,000. It started off probably getting about £300 a month rent, sold for about £82,000. Now, the reason why I sold this property is because now, when I get a property back from a tenant, I decide whether or not it will work as service accommodation or not. And if it doesn't, then I will sell it on and invest the money in something that does work as serviced accommodation. So if you don't know what serviced accommodation is, I'm going to explain exactly what it is, how that works later on in this video. So let's get to my next property. It's a really long drive, so let's go now. So my first one is there, and my second one is there. So this one behind me, the upstairs flat, I bought in 1995, again with 100% mortgage for £22,000. And so I still have it today. It's a normal buy-to-let rental property. Rents out for £550 per calendar month, and at the moment it's worth about £120,000. Okay, so fast forward a few years, 2008, the ground floor flat became available, and so I thought it'd be really cool to have both flats in the same building, economies of scale, etc., etc. So I bought that, and the market has obviously gone up, and that was for £78,000, and that one's been a buy-to-let ever since too. As a soldier, it wasn't that easy to manage deploying at the time to places like Bosnia, especially when there was tenant issues or things that needed fixing at the property. If I knew then what I know now, I'd have definitely outsourced the management to a letting agent. Definitely don't try and do it all of yourself. I don't know if you can relate to this, but you only actually know the stress you were under when that stress is removed. And so now that I am doing it right and outsourcing the management of my property portfolio, it's a lot easier, and it helps you scale. You can take on more properties when you're not worrying about the day-to-day running of your portfolio. Managing a portfolio whilst I was in the army, well, I used to do it wrong. So before I got educated, I was the guy on a satellite phone from Afghanistan trying to get a plumber out to deal with a leaky tap. So we actually got attacked a couple of times whilst I'm on the phone. Thought I was being clever and I thought I was saving money on letting agents, but here's the thing. I had tenant problems. I wasn't credit referencing tenants, no one was. I was having voids, I was having builders let me down. It was trapping me in a job where I was literally being shot at. So property investing should release us from a job. It shouldn't trap us in a job, but only if you know how to invest in property. The other thing is that when people say to me, oh yeah, but property investing's hard work, I say, but compared to what? Let's face it, it's exchanging time for money. It's actually exchanging life for money. And in some instances that I'm very familiar with, it's risking your life for money. Sod that. We can take control of our own destiny in property. It's just a case of learning how. And you can create life-changing recurring income from property, which allows you to do what you want when you want. And I will be forever grateful to Progressive Property for helping me learn how to do that. Okay, so we're in the Royal William Yard and it's been converted into apartments and cafes, and so we've got a rent to SA in the building that you can see behind me. So what is rent to SA? Well, SA stands for serviced accommodation, and ultimately it is short-term rental as an alternative to a hotel. So rent to SA is literally renting a property from the owner and with permission using it as serviced accommodation. And that's exactly what I've done here. So in the building behind me, we've got a rent to SA that I'm actually renting from an ex-colleague of mine, and we're able to give him more rental than he was able to get as a buy-to-let. And the really cool thing is that some months I cash flow more from the studio apartment that I don't own than I do from 7-bedroom HMOs that I do own. So how cool is that? So this is a great way for you to get started in property right now, because you can literally just rent a property at market rent and use it as service accommodation, creating huge cash flow. You don't have to buy properties, you don't have to do a refurb. Now with the right knowledge and education, I'm doing buy-to-let, I'm doing HMO, I'm doing service accommodation, I'm doing buy, refurbish, refinance. And so there are multiple ways to earn life-changing income from property. There is a property strategy for everybody. It's about getting some education, choosing a strategy for you, and go and make it happen. So if you want to get educated and you haven't started yet, there is a free report in the description. Go download it. Okay, so this is the next investment property that I bought. It had previously been used as a HMO, but I spotted that I could convert the ground floor into a self-contained apartment. I moved into that, but let the rooms above, so 4 letting rooms above. So literally the rent from the 4 letting rooms above was paying for me to live in this property for free. Let's go have a look. Going inside, on the right here is the self-contained apartment that is currently let to a tenant. So as you can see, it's a really nice presented kitchen. So this is one of the guest rooms. This particular room is presented as 2 single beds. The lounge, you can see that it looks really nice. Heated towel rail here so that guests can keep their, or dry their towels and also keep them warm. So in this one, we've got king size bed, and again, everything that the guests need. So I bought this property in 2005 for £215,000. It's £650 rent for the ground floor flat, add £1,500 cash flow a month as service accommodation. That's in excess of £2,000 cash flow from a property. It's now worth in excess of £500,000. Because of the capital allowances, I'll get to earn £50,000 tax-free. So in a nutshell, this property has had many evolutions over the years. It at one time was a B&B, then it became a HMO, then it became my home and a HMO above. Now the ground floor is a buy-to-let and upstairs is serviced accommodation. It's about choosing the right property strategy for you in your area. Being in the military, it's not a complicated thing. You ultimately have to do what somebody tells you to do. And so let's face it, that's a pretty simple concept. So you do what somebody who's leading by example, someone who's successful tells you to do. And then when I first started to learn how to do property, as a professional property investor, I was being told how to do it by people that were leading by example and who were successful. I think a lot of people can try and overcomplicate this whole thing. You just need to take the advice of somebody who's giving you the right advice and implement that. Okay, so we're outside of 29 Commando's base, the Royal Citadel on the Hoe, which is who I served with. But there's something even more important that I'd like to show you. Let's go there now. So we are at the Commando Memorial, and the names on the memorial behind me are the fallen, many of whom personal friends of mine that were killed during my army career. These were the guys who died during the Afghanistan tours that I was on, and so these four were killed on the first tour. Shared a tent with Mick during part of my time on that tour, and then on my next tour, these two men were killed. Completely tragic, obviously. And on this tour here, I knew these three guys very well. You've got Les Hay here, good friend of mine. Welly Evans, very good friend of mine. And you've got Ian Seymour from 148 Battery, tragically all killed on the same day in a helicopter crash in Iraq. Llewellyn here, I actually carried his coffin. That's one of the hardest days of my life. We must always remember the fallen, because they've ultimately paid the ultimate sacrifice. I now know that you get one life and you need to lead the best life you can, and in a way you owe it to the fallen to make the most of the life that you have got, because they will never get to spend the rest of their lives with their families. So the day I handed in my notice was Remembrance Day 2010, and I was literally at work in camp, and I was about to go to church to remember the fallen. And I decided that enough's enough. I had another Afghanistan tour looming at the time, and I actually handed in my notice on that day, Remembrance Day 2010. And I would serve 1 year from handing in my notice before I would leave the army. But by implementing what I had learnt about property, I was able to create enough income from property to be able to leave the army on 11/11/11 without the need to get a job. So if I hadn't built the portfolio that I've built up, I'm pretty sure that I would still be in the army today. When I handed in my notice, I had another Afghanistan tour looming at the time, and just, let's face it, who knows what may have happened. So I will be forever grateful for being able to create the income that I've created from property investing, to actually be able to leave the army and not need a job anymore. So we're here in Port Talbot at a property that I bought in order to sell on, and we call those a flip. So a lot of my properties in Swansea I got as a result of an advert that I had in the local newspaper. And guess what? Somebody invited me to come and make them an offer. And you know what? I buy the houses where the answer to my offer is yes. Thing to remember, if you're getting too many yeses, you're offering too much money. And if you're not making enough offers, you will not get a yes. Now, a flip is buying a house in order to sell it on. Now, we would flip the houses that are more expensive to buy. We keep the cheaper houses because they represent a much better return on our investment. So the owner wanted at least 250, but hey, we can't buy houses at their market value to make money out of property. So you take all emotion out of it and you make the offer that your deal analysis says you should make. She didn't accept it, but she came back 6 months later and said, is the offer still on the table? So bought the house for 220, did a refurb, sold it on for 280, made about 20 grand profit in this flip. If I could only do one out of flipping or keeping for recurring income, it would be keeping for recurring income. The good thing about flipping properties, to be realizing a big chunk of cash, is it can get you out of debt. Another good thing to do with flipping properties is to actually create a nice deposit pot for buying properties that you want to keep. The good news is you can do both. You can do flips and you can buy and hold. Okay, so this is another one of my investment properties, and I bought this one initially as a buy-to-let. And so the purchase price was £54,000. We spent £3,500 on it, and then it revalued at 90,000. So I then put another 75% loan to value interest only mortgage against that property, which gave me £67,500. So I literally got all my money back out with cash back. And so as you can see, there's nothing fancy about this property. This is the type of properties that I would be buying as buy to let. But guess what? I used to cash flow about £150 per calendar month from this property. So I didn't used to get a massive amount of buy-to-let rent, but as serviced accommodation, I would literally get 5 or 6 times the cash flow from the exact same property. So I learned a fundamental lesson there that you don't need to go buying expensive property to use as serviced accommodation. And it was actually my dad that gave me the tip off about this property, said that I could get it at a good price. Now my dad has always been a big inspiration to me. He's the reason why I joined the army, and he's the reason why I started investing in property. So why don't we go and have a chat?
I was into all the estate agents, and they came on to me whenever they thought there was something that I would want. And they came on to me with this one, and I didn't need it at the time, and Kevin was building his portfolio up, so I told him to have a look at it. So he owned this one and then sold it to the guy he bought it off.
The agent said, right, you can get this cheap because of Japanese knotweed, but it didn't have Japanese knotweed. I even told her that, but I just bought it at 54,000. It was worth a fair amount more than that. Property investing is not like a job. It's enjoyable, it's exciting, it's rewarding.
As long as you're doing stuff you enjoy, like going on holiday, which I do a lot. I'm going away next Thursday to Lanzarote, and I don't have to worry.
Recurring income from property allows you to do what you want, when you want.
And I'd advise anybody else, get the knowledge and go ahead.
I'm outside one of the best property deals I have ever done. This is 2 houses on one title. It cash flows on average over £3,500 per calendar month. So the numbers of this house is, we bought it from an estate agent for £90,000. We spent about £65,000 on it, turning it from a 3-bed house into a 5-bed house, and we added a couple of bathrooms to the property as well. They're still on one title, but they valued up at 240. Now that valuation of 240 was back in 2017, so whatever it's worth now, it's worth a lot more. Did a 70% loan to value mortgage on that valuation, which gave us all of our money back out with actually about £4,000 or £5,000 cash back surplus at the end. Interesting, when we did this property, we imagined that our main guest avatar, if you like, would be contractors and trade. So it can accommodate a lot of people, it's free parking on the street, and there's no height restrictions or any restrictions on vehicles, so there's plenty of parking. But surprisingly, our first guests were 7 Italians. Now, this was in the summer of 2017, and there was a football match taking place between Real Madrid and Juventus in Cardiff. And the hotel prices were £1,000 per hotel room per night during that Champions League final. Now, my Italian's not great, but I imagine when they looked at how much it was going to cost all 7 of them, they might have said something like a mamma mia or something similar. But do you know what? What people do is they will widen their search parameters on booking.com or other OTAs, online travel agents. And then they arrived at this house in Bonimine and clearly said Bonissimo, because it represented a huge saving for them on a hotel, but it also represents a big profit for us serviced accommodation operators. Now, we weren't sure whether we wanted Juventus to win or lose. Now, they actually lost, but they were obviously good lads and they didn't damage the property or anything like that. But what they did do is change the language settings on the televisions to Italian. So we had to get the Google Translate out to change them back. So tip from me, learn how to use Google Translate when you've got foreign guests. It actually took me 19 years to get to 6 properties, and it was only in the year after getting educated in property that I doubled the portfolio in that year. So the pre-education growth versus the post-education growth is a significant difference. The way to fund property is always to use other people's money. The key thing to remember is that when you represent a better rate of return for people than they're getting in the bank, that's when they're going to give you their money. But because of inflation, it's plummeting in value in the bank. So people with money in the bank have got a money problem, and we can help them with that problem by using their money invested in property. When people ask me what I do for a living, and I'll say something like, I'm a property investor. I use other people's money secured in property, giving them a better rate of return than they're getting in the bank. What I've done is I've seeded the fact that if they are cash rich, time poor, if they are knowledge poor because they don't know how to invest in property, then they could leverage me. I can invest their money in property, giving them a better rate of return in the bank. And when you can do things like that, you've cracked the code, because you can just use other people's money to be building your own portfolio. If you are doing the right things and you're networking with the right people, you're going to meet people who will be willing to invest with you. So we're down in the Swansea Marina right now, and behind me you can see the Meridian Tower, and in there we've got an SA property. It's a 2-bedroom apartment that looks out on the marina, and it is an SA management property. So the backstory to this is that somebody actually came and did our service accommodation training at Progressive Property, and they said, you know what, service accommodation sounds great, Kev, but I just want somebody else to manage my properties for me. Can you and your team do that? Guess what? The answer was yes. It probably turns over on average about £3,000 per calendar month. And so we charge 20% our management fee. So that gives us £600 on average per calendar month. So the phrase, you've got to be in it to win it, is never more true than in property. You've got to put yourself in the way of an opportunity, and people will come to you with money, people will come to you with deals. You've got to be mixing in the right circles. Don't just mix with the skint, miserable buggers down the pub. Mix with positive people that are looking to move forward in their property portfolio. We've got events at Progressive Property where you can come and meet these people. You can be meeting people who can offer you deals. You're going to be meeting people that can offer you property, but you've got to be in it to win it.
The recorded sessions now.
All right, cool.
So I'm working my way through them, and hopefully then...
And you're doing lettings or sales?
Sales I'm in.
Fantastic. So when are you actually coming to the live course?
I'm booked on for the 25th to the 27th.
Well, I look forward to it.
So yeah,
I'll be seeing you there.
walking, but then I thought I'd come over and
we're doing some video for Progressive Property.
Right, okay.
So
right,
that's a small world. It's a small world.
Yeah.
I was just actually saying that we'd got a property in the tower there, and it was somebody that came on the course.
Right.
And then they just said, you know what, can you just manage my property portfolio for me as SA?
Right.
So I said, yeah, of course we can. So yeah, some people just come to learn how they can outsource to other people, but are you coming to learn so you can do it yourself, I take it?
I'm looking to do it myself,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm looking to go into rent to SA start off with,
Yeah.
hopefully. Try and get my first one this summer. Yeah, that's the plan.
Let's shake on
Brilliant.
that. Let's shake on that.
That's
you take
brilliant.
care, Cam.
All right, thank you.
Thanks
I'll
for
see you
coming
in
in.
the
Thanks for
big
saying hello. Thank you.
Yeah,
See you soon.
Kevin, what just happened there?
Okay, so I don't know, you become a bit of a personality, don't you, with Progressive Property? And so Cameron there, he'd seen one of our webinars and he's decided to come to Progressive to learn how to do service accommodation. He just said that he's interested in doing rent to service accommodation, so he's going to come and learn exactly how to do that. He's an estate agent, but he understands that he needs to broaden his knowledge in property if he's going to build his own portfolio. I've shown you a vast array of properties, from bog standard inner city terrace properties right through to fancy waterside apartments. The thing to remember here is lots of properties work as serviced accommodation, but it's about finding out which ones do and how to do it. So remember, the key thing that happened for me is getting educated in property investing. That's what's enabled me to build my portfolio. So if you want to fast track your route to property success, then make sure you download the completely free report in the description, in the pinned comments. Go do it now. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that bell. So I've been Kevin Poneskis, the Property Soldier. Here's to your success in property investing, and remember, your future needs you. Take care.